Welcome to Reclaiming Home, a podcast focused on delivering thoughtful conversation and tangible actions to make housing justice a reality in our communities. I'm your host, AsaleSol Young, Executive Director of Housing in Action, an educator, activist, and proud Turtle Papa. I'm a Black legacy native of Evanston, Illinois, and a proud descendant of Haitians and rural Black and Indigenous North Carolinians. Join me as we take time each month to dive into all things housing, including potential policies, community dreams, persistent systemic barriers, neighborhood successes, and anything and everything in between. We're so glad you're joining us.
Here at Housing in Action, we acknowledge that we live our lives and do our work on land that European colonizers stole from the Dakota peoples indigenous to Minnesota. In order for this theft to occur, sadistic acts of genocide, rape, and forced assimilation were employed. We also acknowledge that we live our lives and do our work on land that was cultivated and developed by bodies that European colonizers stole from the West African countries through the transatlantic slave trade. In order for these thefts to occur, sadistic acts of genocide, rape, and forced assimilation were employed. We acknowledge what was taken from our collective human ancestors. As we do so, we commit to work and fight for the liberation of the descendants of those enslaved through American chattel slavery and the sovereignty of all Native American peoples.
Hello and welcome to Reclaiming Home. Today I am joined by a longtime friend, Anthony Taylor. And Anthony, I'd love for you to kick us off by just introducing yourself to the audience and letting folks know who you are, what you do, and what your preferred pronouns are.
Thank you. My preferred pronouns are they, them. And it's always exciting because I think most people know me as like the bike guy. Mm-hmm. I think I really have a long commitment to engaging Black, brown families, low to moderate income families. People think through biking, but really to outdoors broadly. In the last few years, that commitment has grown into the possibility of how real estate development can also be a part of what connects us to the places we live in, actually have very specific outcomes in terms of quality of life, which I believe are the same vein as many of the things we think in terms of why active living, why outdoors, why environmental justice, well, that matters. And so now I am managing partner for a firm that is less than 3 years old, based in North Minneapolis, called River North Development Partners. I have a long connection to the Cultural Wellness Center. My mother is the founder over 30 years ago, and I honestly believe that the foundation of the work related to outdoors, kind of the new philosophy around how we're approaching real estate development, are grounded in those same principles that were found at the Cultural Wellness Centers. I like to be very proud of that.
Yes, that was beautiful. Unexpected shout out to the Cultural Wellness Center, who is a longtime partner and supporter of our work here at Housing in Action. For those of you who are newer to the podcast, I am AsaleSol Young, they, them pronouns. I'm the executive director of Housing in Action, which is a 31-year-old nonprofit that focuses on housing justice, housing stability through rentals, and home ownership access to the development and construction of new homes. So today we are going to be talking about community investment trust with Anthony Taylor, who has exposed me to the concept, and I imagine actually a lot of our listeners, this is going to be your first time hearing about it, but it is an interesting concept of engaging community more intentionally into their local environment, as you just spoke to, Anthony. So I want you to do more talking than me. So I'm going to just shut myself up and just ask you, what is community investment trust?
Yeah, community investment trust is an ownership strategy, and one, it has a very particular focus on commercial real estate. So that's the first thing. It's 100% focused on commercial real estate, and it is actually making participation and the benefits of commercial real estate ownership available to technically what we call unaccredited investors, which in the real world just means most of us.
Exactly.
That allows us to participate in commercial real estate investment at small dollar amounts. So levels between $10 and $100 a month. And in that small investment at a broad community defined participation. So that's one of the unique things about it is, for example, we would say you can benefit in this community investment trust if you live in 55407 or 55411. And so it is literally defining the community as the people who live here as the participants. You can invest at a $10 to $100 a month. And that investment allows you to benefit from the revenue generation and the appreciation of a commercial property. So think a strip mall across the street, right? And it shows up in two ways that are really distinct, is that you receive quarterly dividends from that as well as appreciation over time. And the magic for me in terms of community investment trust was that it maintains liquidity over the lifetime of the investment. And what that means for us is that if I'm a member of the community investment trust for 15 months and I now have $1,500 of value plus the appreciated value, I can actually utilize that investment for a shortcoming, for a medical bill. And I still maintain my participation in the ownership in that, and by continuing my monthly investments. So that liquidity and that real-time generation of resources was what really got me excited about a community investment trust.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful concept. I'm curious, as also an unaccredited investor myself, the difference between a CIT and a REIT.
Yeah. So, matter of fact, that's great. A REIT, or real estate investment trust, is in many ways a CIT. The difference is that when you apply for most REITs, you actually have to be accredited. You have to show your net worth. You have to show that you can afford to lose the money you're about to invest. And there are usually minimum investments for you to participate. So you would very rarely, I don't know any REITs where you could start for $10, right? Or you could budget $50. Right? So I think that's part of it. Community investment trust also, and I think again, one of the real benefits of partnering with Housing in Action is that what we want to do is make this developmental for community. So instead of starting with an investor pitch of why you should buy the real estate, we actually begin with self-exploration. So we want community members to sit down and really look at their own financial reality, the stability, lack of stability, and come up with a dollar amount that one, starting with a snapshot of where you are financially, you're understanding the basics, then coming with a dollar amount that fits for you to actually engage in. If it's $10, $50 a month, and do it on a regular basis. We ask people to do it as a family, right? That it's a family making an investment. And that's the beginning. So the beginning of a community investment trust participation begins with self-study, right? Understanding your relationship to money, your relationship to the financial institutions, whether they be banks or check cashing stores or whatever you call financial reality. And then we look at the possibility of investment. And then the last part of it is that this is investment that exists in your neighborhood. So that really, I think, is the difference between a REIT. Real estate investment trusts work. But they typically only work for people with means.
Interesting. I have been exposed to REITs that are a little more accessible, but I think that what I'm hearing is the key difference is the access and locality. I'm investing in something in my community, perhaps that I frequent, perhaps that I have even worked at some point, or maybe, my teenager works there, right? I'm investing in something that I can see actively, without my investment, contribute to the well-being of our environment. And now I get to not only spend my money there, but I get to also benefit from the success of that investment. And that's a very significant difference between a REIT, which is typically a very abstract, maybe it's in Florida or down in Atlanta, right? Like, we're investing in these multi-unit developments. We'll never meet the people that are there, that live there or work there, and we won't be impacted. So if they're successful or not,
Well, and I think you just identified something that REITs can be a collection of real estate pieces, right? The one thing about community investment trusts is that they are always commercial properties, right? That's the other thing. It is really looking at the benefit and kind of the unique nature of commercial properties that would be these to businesses.
Right, right.
So that's another part of it.
And so I do want to get into kind of the impact on neighbors, but to your point about businesses, like what is because, especially here in North Minneapolis,
Right.
so many of our local businesses are owned and run by people we know, right? And so how does this appeal to a business owner for their business to be a part of a CIT?
Well, one, they can be owners of the CIT, so, right? They can participate directly in ownership of the building. I think that one of the ways that we think about it is that, and particularly from a small business perspective, small businesses mature over time, and that in the early stages of development, they are 100% focused on building a business, right? What community investment trusts allow us to do is stabilize commercial corridors, because really the nature of entrepreneurship, unfortunately, is that it's a very difficult thing to do, and a majority fail. And that's just everybody. And even when they're well run in the right communities, whatever that means, there's a challenge. So one of the things we see about commercial community investment trusts is using community investment trusts to stabilize commercial corridors, as you said, because they are owned by people who live in the community. It actually allows the community to be involved in which businesses are actually, because as an owner, you get to vote on that over time around the businesses that are actually in there. It actually may afford us to create some type of tiered, supportive rent structure. And I think when businesses are new from a business perspective, the most important thing early on is stable cost of occupation, right? You want to be able to look out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and know what your cost of occupancy is going to be. I think that community investment trusts are inherently supportive, friendly property owners, right? So they work in community works and they work in small business works. So I think there's a much more reciprocal and equitable relationship between the owners and the businesses, because our challenge, and I think that what we're really worried about, is extractive ownership practices, right? And once again, the owners live in the community, right? So again, I think it inherently is much more reciprocal, much more equitable, and supportive. And I think that's where we are. Now, we also envision tying that to assistance. So rather than starting another business, we in North Minneapolis have a number of organizations that are already supporting growing businesses. So we go to WBC. We partner with them around technical assistance and support, right? We work with Emerge. We get community and technical assistance support from them. And so we go to NIA, right? So we have infrastructure around the technical assistance support. So we want to stabilize the commercial corridor through community ownership, tie that to technical assistance, and to stabilize revenue stream, because community is committed to seeing these businesses grow.
That's right. That's right. It's interesting what I'm like pulling out. I almost said extracted, but you're my friend, and this is a mutual exchange of ideas. So I'm not extracting, but pulling out from what you're saying is that this is almost like taking the concept of mutual aid, which our community has done so well with, and elevating it. It's almost like, what is the sustainable version of mutual aid? That means that I am contributing to something that I'm also getting something from, and I am ensuring that it is a part of a long-term sustainability and wealth building engine that benefits who first? Our community.
That's right.
So that's really powerful. So let's go back to the people. So, I live in the 4th Ward, Latricia Vita's ward. But a lot of the businesses are over here in the 5th Ward and Pearl's Ward. So help me understand how, as just like a neighbor, an everyday neighbor, I might benefit from this.
Well, one, the geographies are super tight. Like honestly, driving from Pearl Warren to Councilmember Vita's space is
It's like a 5
I don't even know what that is, right? We just know that's like
right.
But I think that the thing that is, so this is from a banking perspective, I'll say what I really believe, and I use a phrase that I share. I say it's like, what's your life radius, right? And so when you look at your home and look at your life radius, you look at that 1 mile, 2 mile. First of all, 2 miles is a long way. Everybody, it is a long way. So when you look,
I mean, it's not and it is, right?
no, I know it's not and it is, but in a very practical standpoint, let's just say that you live at Emerson and Broadway, or Hemmersburg, or Penn and Broadway. And when you think about your life radius from there, you cover both of those wars, right? I mean, it is when you cross 26 or 30, when do you cross? I don't know. But I guess what? My nail place is on Penn and 36, and the place where I love to get fish is on Penn and Broadway. And you know what I mean? And then I go up to 44th to get caught. So that 1 mile, that is a mile. That covers a lot of space. And so I think that the thing about community investment trusts is that what we're talking about are the businesses that you frequent within your life radius. It's the places that you go to and choose to go to because you live there, right? And that they meet your needs. And so I think, I mean, it's just a really practical way of thinking about it. The other thing that is really interesting related to that, I think, is that, as you said, you will know many of the owners because they also live in the community. And so again, this idea of a life radius or an economic radius, where we talk about all of these historical, everyone is really big on using the idea of Black Wall Street, and the historical reality. And one of the things that they absolutely identified was a clear, identified geography, right? And at that moment in time, it was segregated geography, right? But it's not dramatically different than that in terms of the way that we really experience our communities today. And so the ability and the desire to flow the money that we spend and services that we need in a place that we can walk to. Like for me is really, that's my thing. I'd say, can you walk there? All right. That makes all the difference. And I think that the places that we're talking about are places that you could walk to. Yeah. The thing about mutual aid, and I really appreciate that. I wanna say that what I think about community investment trusts, when I think about community ownership, when I think about this idea of the will that people express through that, is that with this, when we talk about economics now, we talk about building these communities this way, is that they are not initiated by trauma. They're not initiated by, tragedy. They're not initiated by emergency. And on a regular basis, on a daily, course, we are expressing mutual aid as a way that we live, in the way that we reinforce, in the way we receive. And so I just think that's a really important element that you identified relative to economics.
No, absolutely. I think a lot about, again, like I said, the effectiveness of mutual aid practices locally.
Yeah.
And then to your point about trauma, that they have historically, I'm talking short-term history, recent history, been triggered by catastrophic events. This word. But what does it look like for us to think of them as a strengthening of community?
That's exactly.
Because we figure out going to make them ongoing and not about a trauma response.
That's right.
But about a love response.
That's right.
About a support response. About we do this together so that when the next crisis happens.
That's right.
I think about how my grandmother used to talk about the Great Depression. My grandmother was very poor. And so one of the things that I took away from her conversation is that the Great Depression was a catastrophe, right? We all know that. That's history that we all share, that we all know. If you were super wealthy, it didn't have a huge impact. If you were super poor, like my grandmother, it also didn't have a huge impact, right? And so the space that I'm highlighting is this consistent aid.
Yeah.
Means that when the crisis of like a depression or something happened, we all are on an equal footing, and so the impact is less, right? Like your business might be thriving, and I might think of you as the wealthy, but now I'm in a CIT, right?
Yeah.
So I'm also benefiting from your wealth building. Like we are doing this together, and I think that is incredibly powerful. help us understand the difference between a CIT, Community Investment Trust, and a cooperative real estate ownership model.
So I think that the first thing is the community investment trust. It again is an investment vehicle for small value shareholders, right? So it allows shareholders of small dollar amounts to participate in commercial real estate. The real estate cooperatives, I think that two things. They typically are let me say, and there's professional management in the CIT always, right? So that's part of the structures is professional management part. I think with the community cooperatives, one, they're often owner occupied. I mean, occupied by owners. I mean, there's a specific participation of occupants as owners, and then they share management of it. Or there is a structure where members collectively own, but they also manage. I mean, and it tends to be smaller numbers of people, right? Though I think those two things. I think and that's how they're structured. Community investment trusts are also there is an immediate financial benefit that comes because what we're doing is we're creating a corporation that is the building, and the building has leases that collects rent, and through that you as a shareholder participate in that thing, and so that's why there are quarterly dividends at a very early stage of this. And annually, because we are really focused on professional management and what's going on, there is share value appreciation happening because you are paying down the mortgage over time, bringing in new shareholders all the time, and there may be 400, 500 participants, and as many as 1,000 in the community investment trust. So you're getting immediate return and value, and you can liquidate at any time. That was really important. So 12 months, 18 months, 6 months, and you do that. With cooperatives, usually and often you're not able to liquidate your resources until there's some type of triggering effect,
Right.
a sale, where you refinance, and those kind of things. So there's liquidity is a major piece of it, and then the number of owners in it, and then again the piece around many times the participants themselves are occupants of the building. They were see a lot of artist cooperatives, for example. The other thing is cooperatives can also be real estate. I mean, be residential, right? So you can have that type of participation. Whereas I said, community investment trust, but always commercial, and even their origin. And I think it's a really amazing thing that you are talking about the Great Depression, because the origins of the community investment trust are the Great Depression. That this is the difference. The community investment trust is a SEC structure. So it is the Securities and Exchange Commission structure for selling and buying stock. And it was created after the Great Depression because so many people lost money. And what they did is they actually went to banks, because in 1934, banks were the most conservative and were really good at predictions. So they asked banks to create an investment structure for the average person that would allow them to maintain liquidity and be in first position if anything happens to the investment. So they would be paid for the bank was paid.
Okay.
And so that's where it came from. It's really amazing that it is an old structure. It just hasn't been used in years because we've had a mind shift in terms of who gets to participate in investment. Right? So it literally came out of creating.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and so to that point, where can we look to see this operating already? Because, right, it's not yet happening here, but where is it happening?
The best example is in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
It is now called CIT Services.
Okay.
But it was funded initially by Mercy Corp out of Portland, and what they were very similar community in that it was a historically disenfranchised community separated by highways, by a very strong immigrant community, and of course the historical devaluation of properties.
Sounds familiar.
Right? So what they did is they purchased a strip mall.
Okay.
Really small strip mall. They got some seed investment in the same way that we're trying to build it, and they basically stabilized the building and then began to sell shares
Okay.
right? And they were the first ones to say, well, you have to live within this area to participate. They began looking at this idea of asking community members, do you want to invest? And I think the thing that is often thought of is that community members, especially in historically marginalized communities, low to moderate income communities, don't understand. The thing they found is that overwhelmingly there was a desire to invest. Overwhelmingly there was an understanding of the value of commercial real estate, but there weren't vehicles for doing it. So that was their initial set of work. And then they went about, seeing who is, going through the same process that we talked about, self-study, how do you participate, and then kicking it off. And they are 7 years into the their initiation of the investment trust.
Okay.
The participants have realized a 14% return on their investment over time.
Okay.
The average investor, and then is 60% people of color, and 80% immigrant people of color, over 60% women investors in the project, that they have on average stayed in the program for over 3 years. The number one reason that people have withdrawn their money was a family emergency. Number two was home down payment. Okay. And so all of the things that we're talking about in terms of wealth generation in real time were realized. And so they really fought a family crisis or celebrated a family investment. Those top two. The third was college.
Oh, I love that. Right? The nerds in the room, I'll push our glasses up to our face. But that's incredible. So essentially what I'm hearing again is there's a stability factor, right? In this country, we know that I think it's 140 million people are one crisis away from poverty, right? From something very detrimental. And so what you just said is that when that crisis arises, because life happens and so it will, this avenue rather, gives people an opportunity to access capital without having to endure the crisis, without having to borrow money, which can exacerbate the crisis, but to say, oh, I have a resource. Once they move through that, they can look to wealth creation.
That's right. And they can continue right along it.
They could continue, and they can advance themselves through education. Really powerful. That does make me want to ask about the difference between this and a 529 plan, but that is not why we're here today, and so I won't get us too distracted. But that is really powerful. So from stability to wealth, this is why you are here with our community, because these are things that matter to us. And frankly, homeownership is, I'm going to stop calling it wealth. I think that that's a misnomer in this country, right? Ownership of home and land is about longer term stability for your family. It's multi-generational stability. Yeah. So we go from surviving the crisis, which is stability today, to home ownership, which is stability tomorrow.
Yeah. And that, I'm telling you, that's what pulled me in, because I was really pushing back on community investment trust initially.
Okay.
And when I really dug into it, and that was what got me really excited about it, was the real-time wealth generation, the ability to mobilize it. So that's my definition of wealth now, which is resources I can mobilize in my own best interest today. And that was, and so, and when you say a crisis, you can go to the CIT, make a withdrawal, and have that money within 30 days. And that liquidity was really magic, in terms of that. And I think, again, that is because of that SEC structure that makes the bank take second position. So it's a really way that the structure is built so that the community maintains liquidity. And that really was important to me. Yeah. Also, when you talk about the wealth, the habit of wealth,
Exactly.
right? The habits of wealth as well are part of it. So that monthly, incremental, continuous investment.
Yeah.
And then it is solidified by, guess what? Driving down the street to a building that you are part of, going to a business in it. The other thing that they found is that the real estate property itself is more stabilized because the businesses don't turn over as often. So again, it really is reciprocal in terms of the benefit for the trust and the benefit for the community,
Absolutely.
and the benefit for the entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I want to go out to dinner and I know that I'm invested in a restaurant that's walking distance from my house. Oh, I want to go out to dinner. I think we're going to stay right in the community. We're going to go right to dinner right here. And that is transformational. You mentioned that it takes about 30 days to get to kind of cash out if you need to. And so I think it's just really important to name that while this can be an avenue to secure resources so that when a crisis happens, you are not put out even more, you still have to build your savings.
Yeah.
And you have to do that separately from this because savings means that stable cash. And to your point about building that habit, this helps people get there. It's kind of like if I can set aside a certain amount of money for this investment, I can also set aside a certain amount of money to put in a high yield savings account, which if I need to get it today, I can go get it. And that's also how we keep folks out of crisis. So I just wanted to make sure that we name that.
Well, that's where the self-study begins. I mean, that's so you're right on, that is why it isn't, the beginning isn't a pitch to make you buy the real estate. It is self-study. It is understanding your finances. How much money really do you have? What are you really spending your resources on? Can you even afford to do this, right? And you in how could you afford to do this, right? So it's that thing where you really look at it, and I really know that we're American. We are deeply influenced by marketing. It is the amount of ways that consumerism shows up. And I think that's one of the elements of when we got back and looked at this kind of introductory, this financial, self-study that we were doing, was really helping people become aware of the ways that marketers know the hole in our heart and they fill it with their product, right? You know what I mean? The ways that we overvalue tennis shoes, or the way we how does that happen? What is yours? Maybe that's the thing, right? The self study is, well, what's your thing that you do that is either solving an emotional challenge, building identity, what are and marketers know, like I just worry they know the holes in our heart deeply. And so that is part of the financial self-study in terms of the way that we've introduced it as well. So it isn't just the typical blocking and tackling of a checkbook balance. It's really looking at the relationship to money and the emotional ways that we spend.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot of grounding in personal finance, right? Personal finance is personal, right? And I love the naming of being, you said American, I would say capitalist. We are really good at capitalism. And so part of the beauty of personal finance is helping folks understand what is actually meaningful spending to them.
That's right. And I love I'm going to use that personal finance is personal.
Personal finance is personal. I wish that was my own, creativity, but I like following personal finance folks. But the thing I love about the CIT, just to bring it back, yes, it's funny that we are all consumers and how marketing can control us in a lot of ways. What I like about this model is that it sits comfortably somewhere between capitalism and community.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not saying, this is kind of like it goes back to what I said earlier about mutual aid, because mutual aid recognizes that we're functioning a capitalist system.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, but we got to make community work within this, right? And so CIT like I said, it's kind of blowing that up. It's enlarging it, and it's saying, okay, within the capitalist structure, folks need to be saving, they need to be investing. This is not necessarily about becoming rich, which is why I veer away from using the term wealth building. This is about stability today and stability tomorrow. I save for today because that's stability today. Right. I invest today because that's stability tomorrow. And community investment trust allows me to expand that from my person to my household to my 1 to 2 mile blocks of community that I care about and that I want to be here for, and that I support because essentially they support my way of life and my way of being. So now we've hyped up CIT a lot. And I think it's important to recognize that it's not a perfect model.
Yeah.
So tell us about the cons, or tell us about the things that are not working, or perhaps with the Portland example, things that we're able to learn from them to do better.
Well, the biggest thing I'll tell you, as we build one here, we have a number. We have a North Minneapolis set of properties identified, and a South Minneapolis set of properties, and North Minneapolis properties identified. The challenge is the biggest challenge is that we're building a capital stack. We're building the dollars to purchase the property, and a piece of it is where we're looking for a community partner that will let their money stay in for the long run, because it creates the cushion for community. Is how it really what we're saying, right? And so that is something that really is difficult to get all of it and pull it all in. So that's just reality, right? It is also a unique opportunity of Minneapolis. We do have the best philanthropic community in the country, probably, and so that's why I do feel like we will solve for that. I think the other piece of it is that I think it really that you kind of talked around a little bit is that is still investment. There is a possibility of risk, right? Because it is commercial real estate requiring professional management with leases and businesses that they are managing, and entrepreneurship is inherently, challenging. So there is a possibility of that. The like I said, the counter to that is when you talk about mutual aid as a cultural response, which I believe is not just a cultural response, it is actually part of the cultural character of here. That actually is what we're really looking at that will smooth it out. And that's what we found in Portland. We're part of a national cohort. We actually are working right now with about 15 other cities actively looking at community investment trusts and how it affects in community. So we're right at the cusp of a major kind of expansion around community investment trust in Houston and Dallas and Detroit and Milwaukee, and in Philly, in right outside New York and Brooklyn. I mean, so we're really, and again, all of these communities are really similar in terms of historical impact. One, African American legacy, impacted by highway systems. You know what I mean? Disproportionate benefit of white communities versus their Black and brown community members. And so it's been really interesting to do that. And so we're solving some of those challenges together around investment. The last part that I will say is that we are having to actively work with community members to think about anti-displacement strategy and appreciation, right? Because the idea of if the value of things never go up, that's not good either. And there's an educational process around that, because right now we are clear about anti-displacement strategies. We do not want that. We see this as an anti-displacement strategy because as the community grows and the value of community grows, the participants are people who live here now. And that's really the key. But it is, it's a really interesting conversation with people, right? And the other thing is that the cost of running a building is the cost of running a building. So having a relationship with the tenants in a way where they see the benefit of the cost of being there is really important. So that's a different kind of relationship from a building owner tenancy standpoint. There's much more transparency. There's much more mutual benefit. There's much more, where you go to the community together, right? And you also go for support together, right? So again, that's not going to be easy. We really do know that. And so we're really trying not to we're trying not to have unto rose-colored glasses about it. And as we talk to community, we feel confident that we can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People are very invested in what happens next here. And as you said, there's a natural sort of culture of care that we have, a good practice of embodying and activating. And so it's a really great opportunity, I think, um, given the political climate,
Yeah.
for people to think about, yeah, how do we start to take ownership of resources, our local resources? How do we start to rely on government systems a little bit less? So that's beautiful. I love that. So I know that the audience is excited because this is what we talk about. This is what we try to figure out together, is how we can systematize things like mutual aid and care. And CIT gives us a channel to do that. So how do folks get involved?
Well, we are in the very early stages. I think that people can really, I'm going to say they're going to be able to follow us through your communications. We'll continue to do that. We're really looking at, I'm very excited about partnership with you and with other organizations. I think part of it is because the commitment you have around what you just said, systems of mutual aid, is really the partnership we need with clear for-profit capitalists.
Yes.
Right? It is
Yes.
really and the accountability
Yes.
of someone who has integrity there. Like
Yes.
no one really wants to admit that, right?
Yes.
We all get distracted by that. So we're really looking forward to that. So they can follow through your communication for sure. I think when we do the first one, especially Northside, it will happen through this communication channel first. I think the other thing they can do, they can follow us at River North Broadway.com.
Okay.
So rivernorthbroadway.com is kind of our home site. They can do that. And we are going to be launching community meetings related to Community Invention Trust this summer. So we are really looking at the first offerings around that. And those will
Perfect timing.
go through one of our channels as well.
I love that. Perfect timing. Super exciting. So before we wrap our conversation today, Anthony, as you said, people kind of know you in community as the bike guy. I think Anthony, what is the name that General Taylor?
Oh, Major Taylor.
Major Taylor, right? That's the name that a lot of people kind of associate with you. And I have personally seen you walk in many different spaces. I'm curious, and for those who know you who are listening, like what is like one of your favorite memories in your long career of working for our Minneapolis community?
One of my most favorite memories of some version of this is that right after, if you remember, right after George Floyd's murder, we were already in COVID, right? So we were on lockdown, and the sense and the concern was we were going to get outside and protest and kill everybody. You know what I mean?
Yes, I remember
that. It was like that was real. We were like, we're gonna
go there, but a lot of people might die.
people might die. That was the thing.
About that, yeah.
And I don't think people know this is that the federal government and the health department, the federal health, they were watching this, and what they did is they were watching if there was any increase incidents of COVID transmission due to the protests. And the protests themselves were the first demonstration that you could actually be outdoors, that was the only safe space. So I saw that data. And I'm a nerd like you, right? I'm watching weird data. So when I see this, I go, you know what that means? We can have a bike ride. And so we hosted, and you were probably part of it. I think, Janata Petrus was probably, it was like this, we was pulled, and we did a bike ride that we had 400 people show up for. And it was the most amazing. I have a picture of 400 people in masks. And what was really important about it is that it was identified as a ride for the Black community.
I remember that.
Remember that? And we and the number of white allies who understood and didn't show up, those who called and asked permission and we asked them not to, and and those who came and we asked them to leave who did, was really, really clear. So that has really been the most inspiring, compelling, exciting movement of 400 Black people on bikes moving through the city. And it just that for me, that mobility, that solidarity,
Yes.
was everything.
Yeah.
And it just let me know we're gonna be all right.
We're gonna be all right. That's right. And I just that that example really kind of illuminates this conversation, right? Because it shows how good we are at taking care of each other,
Yeah.
how good we are at listening, right? Like, I love the examples you said when, sometimes white bodies showed up because they wanted to be allies, and it was like, this is actually not your space.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yeah. And really the clarity of that within us. And I think that's the message. The clarity within us was really, we weren't like, oh, yeah.
Yes.
The answer was no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't, the answer was no.
Right.
And I think that was really the first time that I had ever done that, been a part of it. And because we're all about solidarity, right? But I think,
and that is a form of solidarity.
that it is the ability to stand firmly, say no, and have agreement that yes, the answer is no. That is solidarity too. You're absolutely right. So it was that still stands out as just an amazing moment, and I'll never forget that.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Anthony, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
It was fun to hang out in this way with you. So, of course, everyone, Anthony, please share your website again, just one more time for folks. If you have any social media that you want folks to check out and track, like, let them know.
Yeah, they can. My social media where everything kind of goes through is I am anti-aging. To spell that out.
That tracks.
And that track. So that you can see everything through there. A summer of slow roll is coming, so you'll get invitations to weekly rides. And you can also, from a development standpoint, follow us at River North Broadway.
Perfect. River North Broadway. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Of course, you can also follow us. We are on all of the social media apps at Housing in Action. That is across all of our platforms. And our website is www.housinginaction.org. Very easy as well. We will have links both to shout out Anthony's projects as well as Housing in Actions attached to the podcast notes. And that's it, y'all. Like, stay tuned. As Anthony said, there'll be more information for those of you deeply interested in engaging around CIT. This will not be the last time you're hearing about it. So we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning into Reclaiming Home for today's discussion. If you like this podcast and want to support Housing in Action's work, find us on socials at Housing in Action or visit our website at www.housinginaction.org. Until next time, remain connected and informed.